Hey girl, hey! Quick question, where do you fall on your to-do list? My name is Jamia Ponder, and let me tell you, I didn't even make the list. I am host and creator of the Mrs. Beside, a safe space dedicated to the real ones, standing beside and never behind. Girl, this life ain't no joke, but best believe everything you want, you are worth. It's time, let's air it all out. Trust me, I understand. Whoo, child, it's a lot. Thanks so much for joining us again. I am elated today. I have the most beautiful Miss Kristen Hodson here with me today. She is a wonderful soul that generously is giving of her time to be here with me and with us today on the first of a two-part series entitled, Who is Your Husband Sleeping With? And I've been looking for a therapist, but to address things in two separate fashions. One, to address our need to physically connect with our spouses, and then the other part about emotionally connecting with our spouses. And so I asked Kristen to be here with us today because I want to make sure that we're not brushing over our need for emotional connectivity, because it's so, in my opinion, it's so key and so vital in having that physical connection and deepening the relationship that you have with your spouse. So, Kristen, again, thank you so much for being here with us today. And if you want to just introduce yourself and give us a little taste about who you are and what you do, and then we can jump right in.
Okay. Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm super excited to be on and to be a guest. I love the topic name so much, and I'm excited to unpack that with you. So I'm a certified sex therapist, and with that, I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. So I have a mental health clinic out in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I teach in the Masters of Social Work program up at the University of Utah, teaching human sexuality to social work students who are then going to go out and work in the community. And I believe everyone needs to be able to have a competency around sexual health and sexuality. So I'm also a mom of 3 little kiddos and a wife and my own whole woman. So the intersection of all of those identities come into play for me as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Scarily enough, or eerily enough, or coincidentally enough, Kristen and I had a little conversation before this, and our kids are like just about the same age. We've been with our spouses just about the same number of years. So it was meant to be. It was meant to be. But as I started out sort of this podcast and starting my own journey to unpacking and getting back to who I was, part of who I am as a wife is this sexual being. And I think sometimes it can become so taboo, or can be made to feel dirty, or just something that we don't really talk about. You just do it. Some people may be more comfortable in their sexuality or not. And so I wanted to ask, it's a simple question. It seems silly, but like, how important is sex in a relationship and that need for sex? Because it's always said, oh, well, my husband is the one who needs sex. And it's like, no, I mean, he does maybe from a physical aspect, but you also need sex as a woman. So maybe help us navigate those waters a little bit.
Yeah. So how important sex is in a relationship, it is such a connecting factor. And I hear this with my clients all the time of, this is the one thing that I get to share with my spouse. Like, this is the thing, and this is where we can show up and we can be vulnerable. And there's parts of ourselves that we allow to be known, and we get to know other things in our spouse that are not universally known. Like, no matter how close of a best friend we have, it's a different connection. But what you're saying is so true of sex can quickly become a duty, and our sexual desire or wants or priorities can move down the list, and they don't matter. It can seem that way. And so it becomes like, I could take sex or leave it, rather than it being like, what is my sexuality? How do I want to express it? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like?
Right.
And I don't think women get a lot of opportunity to nurture that part of themselves socially and in our communities, like most men get the opportunity. It's just kind of expected that men are sexual beings.
Right.
But I don't think women get that same messaging.
No, we don't. And I feel like, too, to your point, saying that it is a duty. I had a girlfriend that, we used to joke about the fact that, we'd have to check the box. Like, if I give it to you before you ask for it, that's done for today, versus that being something that I'm looking forward to. And I think a large part of that is because we are missing, and this is something that we have had to work pretty diligently on, is that emotional connection. Because for me, now I'm speaking for me now, but I know that I've had enough conversations with girlfriends where this is a common head nodder, I need that emotional connection with you before I want to become physically intimate with you. That waters my garden, so to speak, before, I want to be physically close to you. So what are your thoughts about that?
That is so true. And my favorite thing is that your foreplay, like when people think of foreplay, they think of it as being everything that warms you up in the moment to get you to sex. And foreplay, how I frame it, is everything that's in between from the last sexual encounter until the next one. And foreplay is all of the ways that you are investing into that relationship, investing into your partner, investing into, like you're saying, those emotional pieces, the relationship. And so when that is lacking, the physical connection will lack as well. But if that is invested into and prioritized, then that will show up in the physical relationship, because you feel close, you feel connected, you feel seen, you feel valued, you feel desired. Like half the time, that is the orgasm, is being desired in terms of, I want to sit and hold your hand and hear about your day. And you know what? Actually, let's not sit. Let's go over to the sink and do those dishes together. That's fantasy foreplay. When I talk to women, they're like, that would do that for me.
Yeah. I'm like, is that bleach I smell? Did you just plug in that steam up? You are a man. Oh, you're looking good today. Yeah, those are the things that do. And it's outside, those things that you pour into your spouse outside of the bedroom, that really matter, right? Because otherwise this feels like that's all you want.
Yeah.
By the time you go to bed, I know if I get some help during the day, I'm usually a little bit less tired by the time I am ready to go to bed.
Yes.
So what are some ways? Because I know that there's probably women out there that are like, yes, girl, yes. But how do we communicate that? Because it can feel like to our spouse that these are shots taken, right? Oh, I love you, girl. It's not you. I don't just want your body, but I do want your body. But, what's a good way to communicate that, that need for that emotional connectivity?
I think so what you're saying is how people show up and partner. That's a new kind of word in relationships, of how do we partner? Because for a lot of people, they can fall into traditional norms. And so if we're falling into traditional norms where women are doing all the things, they're so tired. But communicating that, the trick is I will have a husband say, well, I did the dishes so we can have sex, right? And it's not a transactional agreement, right? I did this, therefore you did that. It's more, I want to feel close to you. I want to feel connected to you so that then you can feel close and connected to me. And I think when we approach it and I want to feel this way towards you, and this is how I feel it. I feel it when you see what is going on in our world and you initiate. I know so many men love it when their wife initiates.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
And there can be an initiation of I think when we speak from our perspective, instead of you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this, that's not motivating. And that actually puts up a lot of defenses versus this is how I want to feel. And this is how I feel it. when you come home and you hug me, when you come home and just play with the kids, those are the things that help me feel like I matter to you. And it makes me then want to show up in a way that matters to you.
Right. And I think too, part of that is when we communicate that is because I know we live in such a microwave society, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes our spouses hear that and they think, well, I did the dishes. It's like,
totally,
give me time. This is something mm-hmm. that we're both adjusting to. And so I think then also making sure you ask for some grace surrounding that.
Absolutely.
And patience surrounding that. Because it's like, don't rush me. This is not a, one and done type thing, or where, you feel like, oh, he folded one batch of laundry and needs a mariachi band. It's like, give me some time, because we didn't get to this place overnight. Right. And so mm-hmm. it may take some time to undo those things. So
it's a new way of relating. And I think when you approach it, I want to connect more intimately with you and have new ways of relating. To your point, to allow yourselves as a couple and as individuals to get to that space.
Yeah.
And to learn, for a lot of people, even talking about sex is new. Mm-hmm. And all of these things are new. And so, if we leave room for that grace, then it's motivating because we've already made room for it. We already anticipate that we're going to hit some bumps along the road.
Yeah. And two, then what helped us was talking about it in the non-heated moments. So it's not just when I'm annoyed because you are trying to approach me and I do not want another hand on me because I have been touched all day. Mm-hmm. Having those conversations during the day, even, building up anticipation towards the evening where I've had time, right, for my mind to mentally sort of get me there. And, talking about those things when we're either not together or when we're not at odds.
Yes.
So
you're spot on with that, because doing it in the moment like that, like you're saying, oftentimes it rarely goes well.
No. And then when you're doing it out of obligation, it doesn't, for me, it doesn't give the edification piece that I need, that validation that I need, that, okay, you are attracted to me for more than just the orgasm, if I can just be frank.
Yep. No, that's exactly. And there's duty and desire don't exist in the bedroom at the same time. So when we feel like it's our duty, it's hard for us to feel desire and claim our own sexuality and experience our own pleasure and be in our bodies. We're more just showing up, getting it done, and it becomes another task that's just being done. And then that doesn't breed future desire and wants.
Right. It breeds oh, God, I don't want to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
I also know that there are other outside factors that contribute to that as well. So emotional and physical traumas that are brought into the marriage. I know that there are so many times where, for me, I had and still deal with to a certain degree, abandonment issues. And so when you talk about bringing either a physical or an emotional trauma into a relationship that you've either suppressed or not fully healed from, your spouse may have those same types of emotional traumas. How can you work through that as a couple to be able to get to a place where you're mutually benefiting from that sexual encounter?
Yeah. And trauma, when we look at the statistics, the reality of people coming into a relationship or moving through their life with some sort of trauma is really high. Not only physical and emotional, but sexual trauma. It's high. So for some people, they may need to do some individual work to understand their own story and how it's showing up in their relationship. And then the relational empathy of trying to understand what that is like for your partner. And then collaborating together of what does this look like going forward? Because safety and pleasure go together.
Yeah.
When you have safety, then you can experience pleasure. But if safety is not present, whether that's psychological, emotional, physical, you can't relax into pleasure. And pleasure, when we have that shared pleasure, is then that connection that I think you're describing and talking about. So it's that relational empathy and really understanding what our partner has been through. What are the things that make them feel safe in a really vulnerable moment? What are the ways that they feel safe in how they're approached, or if there's an initiation? Maybe having it be a surprise initiation actually doesn't make them feel safe. It feels worse, but having it be there be some initiation earlier on in the day or earlier in the week allows them to open up their mind and be more present, because they're starting to establish their own inner safety. Right. So I think it's, again, it always goes back to that talking and trying to understand and establish safety together and what that looks like.
That is so key. That is so key, because, if you're right, if you don't feel safe in those moments, or if there's what they perceive as an inappropriate approach or something that takes them back to a previous trauma, you can forget it.
You can forget it.
It's not going to end well. Or if one party is pleasured and the other is not, somebody's getting up from that not feeling so good.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And there's an incredible amount of vulnerability. I had a previous guest on, her episode already aired, but she was talking about the fact that she had to learn how to be vulnerable in her marriage. And it requires an immense amount of bravery to a certain degree to be vulnerable to that person, and allow them to see those parts of you that were previously hidden. And even walking the road to healing, from those things together, it can be such a beautiful experience, but it can also equally create a ton of things that you still have to go through and still have to work through. But not to put those aside, but I also wanted to ask you about, look, I'm picking your brain and taking notes over here. I've got a journal filled at this point. How can we, or what are your ideas or tips in terms of how we as women can appeal to that sensual side of ourselves? Because I think, again, the media has really portrayed women that are sexual beings or in tune with their sexual side as, dirty, or, that person is a hoe, or
totally,
she's nasty or whatever, because she's in tune with that piece. And so to have that vulnerability or show that side of you to your spouse, you don't want them to think oh my gosh, what did I make? What did I marry? She's a vixen. But so what are some ways that we can, get in tune with, if we're not already in tune with that sensual side of ourselves, to really be able to then communicate what it is we even enjoy in the bedroom?
Part of it is starting to connect with sensuality outside of the bedroom. Where are we sensual in our everyday lives? There are things that I think make people feel sensual. Some women, just the art of getting ready in the morning can be a sensual experience, or it can just be a task that gets done. But there can be some sensual rituals that are just for them. I think our sensuality is when we claim it as something that we embody and then we choose to give to somebody else. It's way easier, because then we're not performing. It is an extension of how we feel on the inside. So I think it's starting to connect with that, because sometimes it can be a far reach to start in the bedroom versus I love to eat a juicy peach, or I love to put on this kind of music. There's music can get people into their sensual side and into their body. I'm seeing you not. It is a thing.
Yes, it's a thing. Okay.
It's a thing.
I got a whole smells, Spotify playlist.
Yes. So it's that. And then I think women have a harder time. They're either caught up to your point of you're either a whore or you're uptight and rigid. And I think women, it's a tough line culturally that women have to walk of don't be so far that you're seen as this, but don't be so rigid that you're that. And that's that performance and getting out of their head piece again of, where do I feel most confident in my body and in myself? Because sensuality is an extension of confidence and feeling I want to get out from underneath the covers. I want to move my body like this. And I have women do an exercise where on one side of a piece of paper, they just write down, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want to do that. And I'm awesome. Great place to start. What do you want? And they're I don't know. And I have them do a brain dump of what they want. I will tell them, I'm like, I bet you could go into a sandwich shop and order down to the like teeniest, tiniest of condiments of what you want on that sandwich.
Yeah.
And I will say, I want you to get to that with your sexuality. I want you to get down to the teeniest, tiniest detail of what you want. And part of that is just allowing yourself to open up and to think, what do I want? And if I'm like, find a woman, find 3 women, find one that when you can see them in a movie, you're like, that. Extract and harvest the qualities from them and then embody them, like be them, step into it. Superheroes do it all the time. Like they step into a totally different persona.
Yeah.
And so these are some strategies to connect with your sensuality, your inner confidence, what you want, so that you can feel it in your body, because that is where sensuality is.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you mentioned the fact that it's a choice, something that you take ownership of.
Yep.
Because it tends to, for me, now I'm talking about me now, I can't speak for everybody, but the more, I don't want to say in control, but the more I feel like I'm giving of that part of me willingly, the more enjoyable the experience is. Yep. So, even making down a list of things that you do want and maybe some things that you want to try and have those conversations, because, I may have some hard no's. We are not bringing a billy goat in the bedroom. It's not happening. Okay. I'm not doing that. But there may be some things that I would be willing to try. And if I don't like them, we never have to I can even say no in the middle of it. We don't have to do these things, but I think that you can, and this is a metaphorical but can limit yourself so much that you miss out on this area that you'd be like, dang, that was kind of nice. How about this coming tomorrow around 2:00? Any plans? Or
So can I give you 2? Because one of the things I think is helpful for listeners are some concrete takeaways. Yes. Because what you're kind of describing is, I call it leftover sex, where you decide what you don't want to do, and this person decides what they don't want to do, and then you just do whatever's left over. And that's not necessarily fulfilling or coming from the best in you. So I do that, what I don't want and what I do want, but you also can do a different list that you could put behind your bathroom and get a bunch of sticky notes and do 3 columns of want, will, won't. You list your hard no's. Like the won't is the hard no column. The willing is like, I'm going to try this. I'm willing to try that. These are all the things I don't know. And then you can have your like, I want this. Yeah. And it's fun because that creates anticipation between the relationship. You can then go pull like, you want to do this? I want to do that too. Let's try it. And it's just a fun way to communicate. Yeah. That's not necessarily verbal and is flirty and gets you talking and opening up to getting to know your spouse. Yeah. As well as like trying new things. Yeah. I love the sticky note idea. And like, we used to email each other. Yeah. When we would get like upset about something and we just needed time, or I needed time to be able to communicate that. Yep. Like putting it down on a piece of paper, we would write each other emails and then respond. And it took away some of that face-to-face like conflict. Yeah. That. So I just think there are multiple ways to communicate is my point. And I love that idea of putting it on a sticky note and having the columns. And, it brings a little bit of fun. Like, I wonder what color sticky are we coming out of the bathroom with today? Are we coming from the red or the green column? I don't know. So I love that. I love that so much. And I guess I wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on, why do you feel like there's so much shame that can be associated with sex? Like, where does that come from? I think shame starts to stem. You have larger culture, and the United States is an abstinence only country, Puritan roots, where it's not talked about. Like it's absent from conversation as a whole. And then you get into religious communities, and it's not only absent, but there's specific messaging that can be shared around sexuality that is a part of your, like as you're being raised, it's getting internalized, and you're forming your identity about sex from the moment you're born. So that gets layered and then go down into your family. and whatever the culture was within your family, then that gets messaged, whether it was talked about or not. I'm not talking about it's even a message, or experiences we had with our own sexuality that made us feel bad or shame or weird, or all of those little experiences that are really developmentally normal, but no one talked to us about us. We didn't get to hear like, oh, no, that's okay. That's totally normal. We make up a story around it and then we carry it through our lives.
Yeah.
And shame gets sticky. So if you have like one shame pocket, other shame pockets start to stick and it just gets bigger and bigger. And I think because sexuality is taboo, we don't necessarily talk about it with other people. And so shame lives in isolation and secrecy and privacy, and not privacy, but secrecy. And so that just makes it grow as well. So I think that's for shame. It's like the petri dish. Brene Brown talks about all those things, but the actual definition of sexual shame didn't even come in to any kind of public discourse until 2017, where sexual shame was studied and what that's like for people, where it makes people feel that they can't assert themselves or express themselves, or they don't know how to make decisions, or they don't know what they want. And all of these things, that didn't even come into the conversation until 2017.
Which is 3 years ago.
3 years ago. 3 years ago.
Crazy. Yeah. Crazy. But you're right, it does. And all of those layers are compacted. And so then you get in a relationship. And not only that, then you marry someone who largely probably comes from a different sexual background. And so then you marry the two ideologies, and somewhere in there you have to find where you guys meld, and how to create an environment where that's not going to be pushed aside, or one party doesn't feel like, oh, I just have to do it, or I have to beg her to do it.
Yes.
Thing where it's like I said, a mutually shared experience.
I don't know if a lot of couples have the conversation, whether it's through email or text or however. What do we want our sex life to be? It just kind of unfolds, and we're oftentimes having sex long before we talk about it. And then it just kind of plays out, instead of being like, what do we both truly want from this, so that it is mutually beneficial and we both want to show up excited because we both know what we want out of it.
Yeah.
That's a conversation I hope a lot more couples can start having of that.
Yeah. And not just letting the time clock run out like, oh, well, it's been 2 days since we got it on, like, I guess it's about time now. I don't want to hit 72 hours. He'll have an attitude by then. Like, not just letting the clock expire on it, but something that you're intentional about, like you're intentional about everything else in your life. So my last question for you is going to be about like, and this may be a bigger one, so you tell me, but about like masturbation in relationships, because I know that there are so many schools of thought, and I know that it's largely a personal decision, but I want to unpack that a little bit.
Yes.
Because growing up Christian, that was one of the things that was very taboo, that and like having toys in the bedroom and anywhere in the house really. But I mean, so what are your thoughts about masturbation and its place in relationships?
So one, there's a giant known orgasm gap where a lot of women, because they don't understand their bodies, they don't know how their anatomy works, they're not orgasming. So that is the first place that masturbation can play a huge role, is getting to know your body, getting to know how you like to be touched, so that you can communicate that, which is a big one. Secondly, room to, again, that sensuality, and that first and foremost, your sexuality belongs to you.
Right.
And then you get to share it. Again, brings it back to a place of empowerment, and it is mine to share. That can shift it from that duty to this. Again, I keep saying this, and this is mine. That is such an important part.
Yeah.
And also that masturbation can bridge desire gaps, where at times there's oftentimes desire discrepancies, which can be produced by stress, medical issues, pandemics, like all these different things that can produce a mismatch in desire. And masturbation can actually, a lot of people will think that it can be a barrier within a marriage, but it can actually be a collaborative experience where it can bring people closer. It can also be a flirty way that couples honestly can flirt and leverage that to create some erotic energy in their marriage.
Yeah.
So it really is supportive for so many reasons, and it really depends on how couples are approaching it, if it's a bridge or a wedge.
Yeah.
But for women in particular, to know their bodies is so important.
Yeah. And I think that's so vital that you say that, like it can serve as an invitation.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, you don't have to watch, come on in, type of a thing. But I think it is very, very, very largely an ownership issue, and making that choice to empower your own self, to embrace your sexuality, your sensuality, and all the things that help make you feel desirable. And then to communicate that in a way that your spouse can support that, where you use that as another measure of connectivity in your marriage and validating you as the woman, or, your place in that relationship. So super rich conversation, very, very, very wise, and actionable items, things that we can do right away. Not something we have to necessarily wait to incorporate. So I thank you for that. Can you tell us like where we can find you if we want to have our own, one-on-one coaching or things that the services that you provide?
Yeah. So Instagram is like the general hangout place, which is just Kristen B. Hodson. That's it. It's just my name. There's a million ways to misspell my name. So I think you'll post it somewhere.
Yeah, we'll put your handles in there for sure. But it's Kristen with an I, 2 of them.
Yeah. And then also the same with my web address. It's just kristenbhodson.com. And that's how you can connect with me.
Perfect. Well, I would love to encourage everybody out there to find out who your husband is sleeping with. Get in touch with that lady, because she's so important and she's so vital and she needs that. And it's our duty to give it to her. So you guys take care until the next time. I'll be chatting with you soon. Bye.